Hi, this is a video to go over Chapter 3 for Business 110. In Chapter 3, we're going to talk about understanding global markets. Over 90% of the companies doing business globally think it's important for their employees to have international experience. U.S. organizations like the UPS, NBA, they're expanding abroad. We've seen that the NFL has started having some games in London every year, and they're trying to gain their exposure in that market. The NFL is normally a U.S. based sporting events, but they're trying to expand. And why do they want to expand? Well, this map shows this really good reason. North America has about 7.5% of the worldwide population. Okay, so that's just not a lot. If you think about your product and how much demand you want, you're going to run out of demand when only 7.5% of the world's population lives where you live. You have to think about some of these places. 60% in Asia. Those numbers are astonishing. 15% in Africa. Those are the two biggest and probably the two biggest untapped markets as well. Importing and exporting, buying goods from another country. So if we import a lot of things from China, shirts, t-shirts, ball caps, gloves, and then exporting, selling products to another country. And we do a lot of that as well in the US. So why are you going to trade? There's certain countries that have abundant natural resources, Venezuela and Russia, and they need other things. Sometimes they need technological resources. That's something that Japan has done. Japan doesn't have a lot of its own natural resources. It's a very small country. So how do exports affect the GDP? The US is only 11%. China, almost a quarter is exports. So the problem here is, what if exports start to fall? And then Germany, 35%. That's a big number in Germany. Okay. Free trade increases literacy rates, increases life expectancy, makes it possible for people to have education that did not have education. Comparative advantage. What this basically says is you as a country should sell the things that you do best and import the rest. So, the US does not manufacture t-shirts very cheaply. Maybe we should import those because somebody else can do them more efficiently. We owe a lot of money from our trade deficits. So we owe China the most, followed very closely by Japan. But then you can see all these other people we owe money to. So for every $1 billion in U.S. exports, you generate over 7,000 jobs. So when people start putting when countries start putting tariffs on other countries, this is sometimes a big reason for that if you're importing a lot, then you're losing jobs. U.S. exports in 2013, you can see that it's a lot for sure. But a lot of it is transportation and equipment, computer and electric products. So we measure trade by the balance of trade. So imports versus exports. A surplus is when we export more than we import, and a deficit is when we import less than we export. And this goes to money too. So the difference between the money coming in the country versus the money going out of the country, it is better to have a surplus, which is more. Okay. Dumping is when you sell a product in a foreign country for lower than you sell it at home. So places like Russia have been charged with dumping steel in the U.S. So say they charge the U.S. $1 million per ton, and they sold it in their own country for 1.5 million per ton. Okay, that would be dumping. Different strategies we see here for reaching global markets. This is the least risk with licensing, and then going to the most with foreign direct investment. So licensing at Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola does a lot of licensing, and so they'll allow somebody in India or somebody in Europe, the UK or France to sell their Coke products. Franchising. So we have this here in the US, but it's also abroad. So KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, all franchise. So it allows somebody in a foreign country to kind of has their own business, but it has the backing of this bigger company. I'm not going to go through all these in detail. I would, if I were you, I'd make sure I can understand the difference between each of them. Joint venture, shared technology and risk. That's the most important part about it. And then strategic alliances don't share costs. So those are the difference between those two. Toyota had a strategic alliance, and I have posted an article here if you're interested with it about Tesla and BMW. Foreign direct investment. So that's when, if a country from China invested in the U.S., that would be a foreign direct investment. U.S. has one of the highest amount of foreign direct investment. China is the most, but U.S. is very high up there. So South Korea actually had a lot of FDI in 2014. So they had a huge increase over 2013, and South Korea is what we call one of those emerging markets. So it's not surprising, as people earn more money, they have more money to spend, and it's not surprising that countries are wanting to go to South Korea and take advantage of those opportunities. Multinational corporation, a company that manufactures and markets products in many different countries. So Honda could be an example of a multinational corporation. They have, they have plants here in the U.S. They have some in Germany. They have some in Japan. These are the different forces affecting global trade. So cultural differences. If you are going to participate in global trade, it's really important that you know different cultural differences. As an example, in my last job, I worked with people at a company in Israel. Well, in Israel, they don't work on Friday. They work Sunday through Thursday because of their Jewish religion. Well, you have to be sensitive to that. They were closed for a week at some of the high holidays, maybe 2 weeks, because that was important to them. Just like in the U.S., we celebrate Christmas, and a lot of people take off the week of Christmas or, in between Christmas and New Year's. They don't do that because that's not their faith. Exchange rates. So the exchange rate of one currency relative to another country currency. So if you have a high value of the dollar is trading for more than foreign currency. Low value of the dollar is trading for less than foreign currency. So Google Finance can do this for you. Literally, all you have to type is here in this box right there, USD to GBP. That's converting the US dollar to the Great Britain pound. And it'll show you for every $1 US, you'll get 66 cents of a British pound. So they are worth more than the US dollar. Legal concerns. There's no one global set of laws. Laws must be consistent, maybe inconsistent. And you need to make sure that if you're going to be trading abroad, that you know what's going on in those different countries. Environmental forces, places such as sub-Saharan Africa, they just don't have the roads and infrastructure that we have here in the U.S. And so you have to keep that into consideration too. How would you get your product to different parts of the world that don't have great transportation systems? So trade protectionism, a lot of countries will use tariffs to maybe make it less attractive for somebody to trade, export to that country. And the point is that hopefully countries think that they're saving jobs for their people. Tariffs, just taxes on goods. Protective, raise the retail price of imports. So domestic goods are competitively priced. And then also you get revenue for governments. Import quota, limit the number of items from a certain country. If the U.S. said they wanted to put an import quota on T-shirts from China. An embargo, a complete ban on the import or export of a certain product with a certain country. So North Korea is a great example of this one. NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement. It's with Canada and Mexico. And as a result, they represent 2 of our top 3 trading partners. Outsourcing, when, a lot of companies have done this to find things that are cheaper. If you purchase a Dell computer, you will most likely talk to a customer service agent in India. That would be an example of outsourcing because customer service agents in India are cheaper than they would be here in the US. That's it for chapter 3. Hope this was helpful. Have a great day.